A fierce orange flare tears across the darkness of Iran's desert night. Before the launch crew can even hear the engine's thunder, 3 heavy ballistic missiles are already climbing into the upper atmosphere. These are not ordinary rockets. They are the IRGC's so-called carrier killers, built for one purpose: to break through the defenses of a U.S. aircraft carrier. Their path bends upward as they surge past 3,800 miles per hour, racing toward a heat signature that appears to match the USS Abraham Lincoln. While much of the world sleeps, a high-risk confrontation is already unfolding far above the ground. The IRGC believes it has finally achieved the unthinkable and struck at one of the most powerful symbols of American naval power. But launching a missile is only the beginning. Reaching a target shielded by one of the most advanced integrated combat systems ever created is an entirely different challenge. The countdown has already begun. In less than 8 minutes, those warheads will plunge back through the atmosphere. If the U.S. Navy's defensive chain breaks even once, the next day's headlines could reshape global events. The protection of the Abraham Lincoln did not begin at sea. It began 22,000 miles above Earth. A U.S. Space Force satellite, equipped with infrared sensors sensitive enough to spot something as small as a campfire in the wilderness, detected the burst of the Iranian rocket motors the instant they ignited. This was not the kind of warning that slowly moves up a chain of command. The information flowed immediately into the Lincoln's Combat Information Center. In an instant, the quiet rhythm of the night watch is broken. The tactical action officer watches sharp red symbols flash across the main display. The satellite has already mapped the flight path. The track is live, and the warning does not stay on a single ship. Through Link 16, it spreads across the entire strike group. On both sides of the carrier, the destroyers USS Spruance and USS Stockdale are already turning their Aegis radar systems toward the incoming threat. They are no longer scanning the sky at random. Now they are locked onto the exact point where the missiles are expected to rise over the horizon of their flight path. This is the opening move in the defensive chain, spotting the strike before the enemy has even completed the launch. But Iran is not relying on only 3 missiles. They understand the U.S. Navy's capabilities, so the attack is layered. At 4 o'clock, while the ballistic missiles are still traveling through the emptiness of space, a second wave begins. Dozens of inexpensive one-way drones lift off from fast attack boats and coastal launch sites. These drones are not especially fast, moving at roughly 120 miles per hour, but speed is not their purpose. They are meant to flood radar screens and create confusion. The strategy is saturation. The IRGC wants American crews forced into a split-second decision: concentrate on the high-speed threats dropping from above, or respond to dozens of drones skimming in at low altitude over the water. It is a classic pressure tactic, built to overload the decision-making capacity of a conventional force. But the U.S. Navy is operating with anything but conventional systems. The Aegis combat system can track more than 100 targets at once, sorting them by danger level and time to impact. Inside the USS Spruance, the tactical action officer is not panicking. He is studying a ranked threat picture already organized by the system. The drones have been marked as secondary concerns. The ballistic missiles are flagged as immediate danger. Then the destroyer reacts. On deck, the vertical launch system bursts open, and the first SM-3 interceptors fire into the night. Each missile carries a price tag of around $11 million, and in a moment like this, every dollar makes sense. They climb hard toward the edge of space, leaving the atmosphere behind to intercept the incoming threat in the silence above Earth. This is where the confrontation becomes truly unforgiving. The Iranian missiles are at the highest point of their flight, drifting through the vacuum before beginning their descent. The SM-3 interceptors race upward at more than 6,000 miles per hour to meet them. The SM-3 does not rely on a traditional explosive warhead. It does not have to. Instead, it uses a kinetic kill vehicle, a system designed to destroy through pure impact. Picture 2 objects colliding head-on at extraordinary speed. The force is so immense that it can tear a warhead apart instantly. Using small onboard thrusters, the kill vehicle makes its final adjustments. It does not simply strike the target, it shatters it. The impact energy alone is enough to reduce an incoming warhead to debris. Inside the Combat Information Center, 2 of the red threat symbols suddenly disappear from the radar display. But one problem remains. One of the missiles is following a slightly different path. One missile gets through. A leaker. The SM-3 missed its target. Maybe there was a guidance error. Maybe the incoming missile changed course during mid-flight. Whatever the reason, the warhead is now plunging back into the atmosphere. It glows red-hot, wrapped in plasma, diving at a 70-degree angle straight toward the flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln. Time to impact, less than 90 seconds. While the destroyers battle the threat above, the carrier's deck becomes a scene of disciplined intensity. 2 F/A-18E Super Hornets launch into the black night sky. Their mission is not the ballistic missile. They are going after the drones and the blinding support attack built around them. Moments later, an EA-18G Growler is launched. For Iranian forces, this may be the most dangerous aircraft in the air. The Growler activates its ALQ-99 jamming pods. This is not random interference. It is precise electronic warfare. It targets the exact frequencies used by the drones to communicate with controllers on the ground. It attacks the guidance systems and radar seekers of other incoming threats. The effect is immediate. The drone swarm loses coordination. Aircraft that were meant to race toward the Lincoln begin circling aimlessly. Navigation signals are disrupted. Some dive straight into the sea. An invisible wall of electronic disruption now stands between the strike group and the attack. Without firing a single missile from the carrier, a large portion of the incoming force has been neutralized. Now the final minute begins. The surviving ballistic missile is only 3 miles away, descending at Mach 5, close to 3,800 miles per hour. The Lincoln's escort destroyer, USS Spruance, turns to its final missile layer, the SM-6. This weapon is one of the Navy's most versatile interceptors, built to destroy targets already inside the atmosphere and maneuvering through dense air. Unlike earlier interceptors, the SM-6 carries its own active radar seeker. Once launched, it can track independently. Fire and forget. The destroyer launches too. The first misses as the incoming missile makes a last-second evasive move. The second does not. It strikes the tail section of the warhead, sending it tumbling out of control before it detonates 2 miles from the carrier. The blast wave shakes the windows on the Lincoln's bridge, but the ship itself remains untouched, and one final layer is still ready. Mounted along the carrier's side, the Phalanx CIWS rotates toward the debris field. Sailors often nickname it R2-D2 with a gun, but there is nothing playful about what it can do. Its 20mm Gatling cannon fires 4,500 rounds per minute. The system activates automatically, locks onto the falling fragments, and unleashes a burst that sounds like an enormous zipper tearing through the night. A storm of tungsten rounds tears through the remaining fragments, reducing them to pieces no larger than coins. The danger has passed. Back in Tehran, the IRGC is already pushing out its version of events. They release selective footage, a blurry launch clip, then unrelated-looking images of an explosion at sea. The message is clear. They claim the Abraham Lincoln is in flames. They claim the strike caused massive losses. But aboard the Lincoln, the crew is already moving on with the routine of the morning. Sailors head to breakfast. The carrier remains untouched. In this encounter, the U.S. Navy does not just prevail physically, it dominates technically. And the lesson is hard to miss. Large numbers alone do not overcome a defense network that is trained, layered, and fully integrated. Iran poured tens of millions of dollars into the strike, committed some of its most capable missiles, and coordinated a major drone wave. In the end, it did not even force the carrier to alter course. That is where the deeper impact sets in. There is a unique kind of frustration in realizing that your strongest tools cannot break through what your opponent treats as standard procedure. That kind of failure hits more than strategy, it hits confidence. The U.S. Navy did not simply ride out an attack, it demonstrated that Iran's missile threat looks far less intimidating when it meets the Aegis shield. It is easy to give all the credit to the $13 billion carrier or the interceptors that cost millions each. But the real reason the system holds together is much more human. It is the 22-year-old sailor inside the Combat Information Center. These operators do not freeze. They have practiced scenarios like this thousands of times in simulators. To them, the Aegis system is not just hardware. It is an extension of their own awareness. That culture of discipline is the final link in the defensive chain. While launch crews on the other side may have been celebrating the moment the missiles cleared the rails, the American Tactical Action Officer was already verifying the intercept and preparing the system for whatever came next. There is something deeply satisfying about that level of precision. A complicated plan executed under pressure, with almost no room for error. That professionalism protects more than a single ship. The Abraham Lincoln helps ensure that the Strait of Hormuz stays open. It helps ensure that roughly 15% of global trade is not held hostage by regional instability. When a carrier group turns aside an attack like this, it is doing more than defending itself. It is helping keep the wider global economy from sliding into chaos. People often ask whether the price is worth it. Is it really worth spending around $50 million on interceptors to stop a handful of incoming missiles? From a purely economic perspective, the answer is obvious. A Nimitz-class carrier like the Lincoln costs around $13 billion to build. The aircraft on deck add billions more, and the people on board cannot be measured in numbers. Spending $50 million to protect an asset worth roughly $19 billion, along with thousands of lives, is not extravagance. It is a straightforward calculation. Even by the cold logic of finance, that return is extraordinary. But the heavier cost falls on Iran. They had just revealed their strongest card to the world, and it was brushed aside in minutes. What was meant to project fear instead exposed a hard truth. Their strategic deterrent faded almost instantly. That is the power of a true system of systems. It explains why the U.S. Navy continues to dominate the oceans. Victory is not based on one ship alone. It comes from the satellite overhead, the Hawkeye in the sky, the Growler disrupting signals, the destroyer launching interceptors, and the submarine operating unseen below the surface, all linked together through a constant stream of data. Few forces on Earth can match that level of coordinated warfare. That is the modern rule of conflict. If you cannot share information with your allies faster than your opponent can launch an attack, you are already behind. Analysts around the world would study every second of an event like this, because the balance of power in the Middle East is closely tied to whether a carrier like the Lincoln can remain secure. If that carrier is forced back, global energy routes face immediate pressure. But the Lincoln never backed down. It remained on station, flight operations continued, and it reinforced one of the clearest lessons of modern warfare. Information speed can be more decisive than firepower itself. There were claims of success. There were declarations of victory. But when sunrise reached the Arabian Sea, the only wreckage in the water would be the remains of drones and the shattered fragments of missiles that never reached their target. The U.S. Navy did not need a statement to answer the claims. They simply kept launching aircraft. That is the reality of major power projection. You do not need to raise your voice when you have unmatched awareness and layered defenses ready at every level. The Lincoln remains on watch, and as long as ships like her hold the line, the rules of the ocean stay unchanged. If you want more second-by-second breakdowns of how advanced military systems and modern tactics are used to counter serious threats, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll keep exploring the technology and strategies shaping today's front lines. The scenario presented in this video is a technical and tactical analysis inspired by public claims involving missile threats against the USS Abraham Lincoln. While it references real military platforms, known capabilities, and regional tensions, the specific engagement sequence is a hypothetical dramatization created to illustrate naval doctrine and layered defense concepts. Until next time, stay alert and keep your eyes on the horizon. The Navy certainly does. Bye for now.